Authorised by the
Right
Australian
across
Government.
tropical North Queensland, you're listening to John Mackenzie's Morning on 4CA 846.
Now, I think this is really quite interesting. You might remember in all the discussions we're having back over the last couple of weeks about this announcement from the state Labor government that they were canning the dredging project. There was a hell of an outcry in this program, but there was also the emergence of an understanding that this project needs to be kept alive. It needs to retain its status as an existing project, because the minute it loses that, it may be gone forever. And if it's gone forever, of course, long term, that could be catastrophic for this city, because ultimately we would see a port that would basically strangle us, whereas we need those sort of supplies coming in ships that are growing ever bigger, and that could be a real issue for us in years to come, to say nothing about the potential end of a cruising industry, the restrictions on HMAS Cairns as far as expansion in the future is concerned. And I had a brief discussion with the city's councillor, Richie Bates, about this. And I felt at the time it was critically important to engage with people on the Labor side of politics, given that the decision has been very much in the lap of the Queensland government. You'd heard what Curtis Pitt had announced. You'd heard the response from the member for Cairns, etc. It was very depressing. But when I took up the discussion with Richie Bates on the program, I talked about the long-term aspect, and his response was, well, if you're going in with an argument that really has legs, that's the argument to take to the Queensland government. It's about the long-term vision, the need for this facility in the medium to long term, which I thought was particularly encouraging. Then I had a discussion with the member for Barron River, who is actually keen on keeping this project very much alive for the long term. Then I had a message come through, a text message a couple of nights ago. I won't give you the whole lot, but very interesting words from Richie Bates, who talks about this no capital works dredging legislation, because since the release of the EIS, his point is this would prohibit the building of boat ramps and wharf upgrades, which is something that hasn't been discussed. And the point he makes here is that is certainly sending the wrong message to HMAS Cairns, among others. This, as he calls it, one-size-fits-all bill. So I put a call through to Richie Bates to get him to expand on these thoughts today. G'day, Richie.
G'day, John.
You've obviously done some thinking on this. Just once again, back to what you see as the, if you like, unseen aspects of this EIS release and what the Queensland government have said about it.
Yes, that's a good point, John. So off the back of the release of the EIS is some legislation, I believe, coming to state parliament, and it's really prohibiting the capital works dredging of the inlet. And now, in terms of, when people obviously hear that, they think it's capital works dredging, but it also involves some other things, and that would prohibit exactly what you said before. It would prohibit the actual introduction of new boat ramps or wharf upgrades, those type of things as well. So it's not just about dredging this affects some important infrastructure that we would need to do over time, just in an incremental way. So I think it's important we get a really good handle on this legislation. Now, there may well be room for amendment to this. I think Craig Crawford's got an eye on this, obviously, with some of the comments he's made as well. And I think now's the time to have a conversation with the state government, because this bill, as it appears that it's going to come to Parliament, is again, I think I mentioned this the other day, it's kind of a one-size-fits-all. It's a blanket one that's aimed at certain ports around Queensland. And it doesn't allow for flexibility. It doesn't allow for individual requirements of expansion, or not even dredging. It's not even about dredging. It's actually about, as we said, wharf upgrades, or if someone wanted to put an extra boat ramp in, this bill could prevent that. I think it's important we understand its ramifications.
Yes, wharf upgrades, ramps, etc. That wouldn't just be the sort of things that would hold back an expansion of HMAS Cairns. It could potentially hold back that industry that has provided really quite a support base for employment in the port, for those companies in the port that do, for example, repairs on the big ships that come in and out of here, some of those luxury boats, etc., recreational boats. All of that could be very much restrained long into the future, could it not?
That's right, and that's the danger with this legislation if this is the form that it takes. And And unfortunately, it sends a message out to the business community or whoever might want to use these facilities that we're really not open for business. We don't have much of a future there. That's not the message we want to send. We want to send a message to the community that the inlet's still alive. There's still room for expansion. There's still a future there for HMAS. Cairns, that's such an important economic driver for us. And I know I've heard Bill Cummings on the radio before talk about the multiplier factor of HMAS Cairns in terms of employment opportunities and trickle-down effect for our local economy. It's the best of all the things we've got. We need to keep that alive. They need to have opportunities to grow. And I think from that point of view, we need to have a good hard look at this legislation before it hits the decks in Parliament.
Richie, and I presume from time to time you talk with Craig Crawford, or you certainly can. If you could get together with him, if you could approach the Labor Party, the Labor government in Brisbane with your points, there would be an opportunity perhaps to get them to slow this process down so we don't see a major mistake made.
I think so. I think that's the key message out of this. Let's have some sensible discussion about what's in the legislation. Is it going to work for Cairns, and highlight these issues, because clearly we don't think it will. And at the very least, allow some incremental development to go on. I'm sure there's some bigger concerns around that dredging, but a lot of those can be overcome with technology now. We can use the best technology in the world to make to dredge, to make these things work effectively with the least environmental impact in a sustainable way. It's really important that we embrace the technology as well. And I doubt some of the practices we're using now are archaic and don't be too critical. We need to move, but we do need to move with the times. And we can do whatever we do in this area, we can do it in a sustainable, environmentally friendly way as well.
We can do that now, or we can do that, do you mean, in a quarter of a century from now?
We can do that now. This technology is available now. There's dredging technologies. The Dutch are world leaders in this type of equipment and practices. That's available now, John, and we need to start embracing that. And this is the future of the way we operate ports.
You seem to be speaking much more enthusiastically about this project.
Well, I think it's first and foremost, I think it's important we talk about the legislation that's coming out, and we don't want to stifle or impede, what's happening in that area at the moment, and potentially this stuff is going to do that. I think it's important we tackle that first. We make sure we can do those important things, like if we do need to upgrade a wharf or put a boat ramp in, let's get those things done. This shouldn't be preventing that sort of stuff, and it sends a positive signal out. From there, we need to be looking at how we do develop the port in the future, and I think embracing technology is a very important part of this. We can get this done efficiently and with the least environmental impact. You're
supporting the dredging project?
Well, I'm supporting the dredging project if we take it on in these ways, if we use these, the sensible technology-based ways and get things done, in the best possible way.
Well, that is supporting the dredging project.
If that's supporting the dredging project, then that's supporting the dredging.
And I've got to tell you, I'm thrilled, because that's one more on the side of common sense. I mean, you're saying it can be done if we pursue what is available technologically worldwide. It can be done, and if it can be done without environmental impact, do it.
That's right, John. I think it's common sense. It's a common sense approach, and I think again, let's begin in the first instance. Let's have a look at this legislation. Excuse me. We don't need to be stifling impediment with things that says, look, you can't upgrade your wharf or you can't build a boat ramp. We've got to get those things out of the way, and that's the first step in sending a message to say we're still open for business. We're still supporting HMAS Cairns into the future. There are opportunities here.
I've enjoyed this discussion, Richie. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
He's the Division 5 Councillor, and his name is Councillor Richie Bates. There's more significance to his commentary in that he has recently announced, or it's been announced before he recently announced it actually, that he'll be seeking pre-selection for the federal seat of Leichhardt in the upcoming federal election due next year. And he is seeking pre-selection for the Australian Labor Party. Now it's at 9 minutes to 10.